why do we think it's important that we find out about whether or not Black history is a part of SDA history? Like, what is the importance? Why do we need to come and have a program talking about Black history? Why are we encouraging people to research it and look into it? What's the purpose? Is it necessary? We will now share with you about different notable Black SDAs in the church. My one is about William Foy. So he's one of the first Millerite preachers who was given the same vision Ellen White boldly spoke about. So, growing up in the church, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but sometimes we hear the name William Foy and we think, oh, that's the person who got the vision, and he just didn't share it with anybody, he didn't want to do it, he was very reluctant. William Foy actually received 4 visions in his lifetime. He received 2 of them in 1842, which, as was said earlier, he lectured extensively on, and then he published a 24-page tract about it. So the tract is actually called, I think it's still available right now. It's actually called The Christian Experience of William E. Foy. So he spoke extensively on the visions and shared these tracts as well. Even a young Ellen White, a teenage Ellen White, she went to hear Foy relate his visions several times in her hometown. And they even had several conversations together about these visions as well. Ellen White stated that it was remarkable testimonies that he bore. He was the first of 3 Millerites to have visions around the time of the 1844 Great Disappointment. Then after the Great Disappointment, he still spent 4 decades in active ministry.
I had Sojourner Truth. I decided that I'll study her this week. She was a Black woman, and she was an abolitionist of slavery and a women's rights activist who preached with Millerites and is believed to accept the Adventist message, as was said in the quiz. She was born in 1797 and he died in 1883. For those of you who don't know what the Millerite movement is, or who's wondering what it is, it's basically a movement whereby they believe that Christ would come in 1843, and essentially the SDA movement was birthed from this movement. A lot of founders of the SDA Church came from this Millerite movement. And also the Millerite movement and the abolitionist movement were very closely entwined at the time, as during the time of the Millerite movement, slavery was a very big political issue at the time. And I guess like a lot of the abolitionists were drawn to the whole Advent message of Christ coming, liberating his people from sin and slavery and stuff like that. So a lot of Millerites were also abolitionists like Sojourner Truth and other people. Sojourner Truth, she was a slave, serving several masters throughout New York before escaping to freedom in 1826. Around 1843, she began following William Miller, and she attended 2 of his camp meetings. And in light of this movement, her name was originally Isabella Bomfrey, but in light of the whole Millerite movement, she changed her name to Sojourner Truth, which means itinerant preacher. And she began traveling and preaching in the streets. And although Christ didn't come in 1843 or 1844, there was still a big, great disappointment. Sojourner Truth, she continued to preach about God and also about her experience as a slave and equal rights for all. and women's rights included.
To either be Dikes. So she, as I said, was born in 1893, so after the Adventist movement had started. She was the first Black woman in America to finish the requirements necessary for a PhD, but she was the third to be graduated with a PhD due to her university having graduation the following summer, and other people got graduated before, but she's the first to finish the requirements for a PhD, first Black woman to finish the requirements. She taught at Howard University in America, or what's now known as Howard University in America. She was part of the English department, but then in, 1920, she joined the Adventist Church. And in 1944, she became a part of the Oakwood College, which at the time was unaccredited. It was a little Adventist college in Huntsville, Alabama at the time. And she was the chair of the English department there. And in her terms, in real terms, it would have seemed like a huge downgrade from Howard University to now being at little Oakwood College, not even university. But she helped Oakwood gain accreditation, so to help them become a legit university in America. She also, as I've said, started the Aeolians, and she started many other things that Oakwood are still doing today. And she, in 1973, the library at Oakwood was named after her. She became a professor emerita. So it's basically a professor who's no longer working as a faculty, but basically they'll come in to do different things at different points, but they're not full-time there. In 1975, the General Conference presented her with a citation of excellence, honouring all her outstanding work that she'd done for Adventist education. So she's a very important woman within Black education for Adventists in general. Like Aeolians now is world-renowned, worldwide. 2 years in a row they've won, World Choir of the Year, stuff like that. So she's helped a lot of things take place. Very important woman. And that's all.
My person was Charles McKinney, and Charles McKinney was the first African American ordained minister in the SDA Church. So most of what Adventists learned about the progress of the work among Blacks, they learned from the pen of Charles McKinney, who wrote regular and detailed reports for the Review and Herald, which some of us may have heard of. Since Black Adventists had not yet formed a critical mass for organised churches, all of the newly baptised Black members would be incorporated into already established white Adventist churches. And since their churches meant so much to the Black members, it's no wonder why McKinney found it so hard to convert them to an essentially white organisation which had very few Black members. So Kinney attended the General Conference of 1891, and in that meeting he stated that there were 8 or 9 million of his people that wanted to hear the Adventist message, and he noted that there were only 2 organised churches among the coloured people and some unorganised companies. So he assured the conference that much work could be done by circulation of literature and things like that, but the greater part of the work had to be done by an actual living preacher. So at the conference, he appealed for at least one white labourer of experience to devote his entire time to work among his people. And his appeal for help didn't go unanswered, because Ellen G. White attended the same meeting, and she supported Kinney's call by making a historic appeal herself in her famous Our Duty to the Coloured People speech, which you can all look up. Charles McKinney had to deal with a racist society and a segregated church at the time, and Graybill said it well: Black ministers in better times made many more converts than Charles McKinney, but no one faced the lonely task that he faced. None laid a more solid foundation than Kinney. His spirituality, his work ethic, his optimism, his passion and love for the work of God and God's people are virtues that are worth emulating by every Seventh-day Adventist Christian.
why do we think it's important that we find out about whether or not Black history is a part of SDA history? Like, what is the importance? Why do we need to come and have a program talking about Black history? Why are we encouraging people to research it and look into it? What's the purpose? Is it necessary?
Knowing that history about who we are today can help us to identify problems and also solve the problems. But if you don't know how that problem arose in the first place, then how can you solve it in a real way?
And I feel like when truth is presented, there shouldn't be any partiality in the truth. So yeah, we've given this, growing up, we've heard of various different pioneers or whatever. It's like one side of SDA history, but I do feel like it's good to be educated on like the full view of history, because Black history is a part of SDA. And to be fair, like before this week, or before like the whole racial issues that have sort of like been prominent in society as of recent, I never really thought to, oh, let me just type in and research my SDA history, my Black SDA history, because I never necessarily thought it was a thing. I just thought, okay, William Miller, Ellen White type of thing. But it's very interesting and very intriguing, and yeah, as a Black person, it's quite, what's the word? I don't know what the word is, but it's quite, I'm gonna just say intriguing because I don't know the word. But to know that like people like you have actually helped in the development and the structure of what SDA Church is today as well.
I was just going to add that it helps to give us also, like as Black people, a sense of belonging within the organisation of being like Adventist. Because if, say, it had come out that, our pioneers were all racist, they all didn't even want Black people as being part of the church, it's just one of those sticky ones, you know what I mean? It's like, like you never know, people want to come on out and start a whole different organisation. So I think rather than when people say, all religion or all Christianity is white, you've all been indoctrinated with this or that, actually being Adventist and being Black and Adventist is important, because a lot of the pioneers helped to even fight for our freedoms.